and welcome to Just One Thing for Parents, where we offer parents bite-sized helpful tips for how to support learning and well-being in their children. And today I am thrilled to be joined by Lucinda Powell. Lucinda is a teacher whose passion really lies in psychology and education. She's actually got her own podcast, which is called Psychology in the Classroom. And have a look over there. She's got some incredible advice for parents about exam techniques, revision, handling exam nerves, loads of different things. But I managed to catch her today to come over to our podcast just to answer this question and have a discussion about what's just one thing parents can do to support their children through the exam period. Welcome, Lucinda.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. So just one thing to support your children through their exams. Just to put it in context, I have a child doing his finals, a child doing A levels, and a child doing GCSE. So we are really in it.
Goodness.
And so I feel every parent's pain right at the moment. And I think the thing that I would suggest has certainly been really important in our house is living in the moment, not worrying about what happened yesterday or what's going to happen tomorrow, but your child needs that support and it needs it now. They need it now. Whether that's help with revision, whether that is calming their nerves down, whether that's just, being there and helping them and supporting them and being a positive, influence. It needs to be in that moment. So really focusing in on the here and now rather than worrying about what might happen tomorrow or next week or next month. So that's kind of my top tip, really, about supporting your children.
It's such a helpful idea and kind of feels really hard for some. Well, it's just hard to do often, isn't it? I suppose what comes to mind for me are the parents who, well, there are often two extremes. You can get some kids who actually their well-being really suffers because they overwork, they don't sleep or exercise or have any kind of family connection, and that's not good. And then there are kids who are kind of lacking motivation, don't seem to care, and that's not good either. And that's the tricky thing. How can parents manage those situations?
So taking that idea of being in the moment, if we take the latter group first, the kids that are not motivated, actually sort of giving them extrinsic rewards, like, if you do really well, we'll, I don't know, buy you a car. Let's take an extreme example. Or, your life's going to be a disaster if you fail in the summer. Actually, in the moment, that's not going to motivate the child. No. The teenage brain is not motivated by things that are far off. So you've got to think about, okay, well, what might be an extrinsic reward to get them motivated right at this moment? But also quite often that behavior is driven by what we call a kind of a lack of self-efficacy. So a child will feel that it might be that they actually do want to do quite well, but they don't know how to revise. So it's worth, as I say, living in that moment, digging a little bit deeper into this behavior. Why is your child not able to motivate themselves? What is it that you could do right now in this environment that you're in to help them? Are they not motivated because the draws on their attention are pulling them and it's more exciting to be out with their mates? How could you encourage them in that moment? Okay, well, if you're going to do some revision, why don't you do revision and then we can let you play on your Xbox for an hour after you've done the revision? So finding those extrinsic rewards that are really immediate, but also just kind of thinking, is it because they can't revise? They don't know how to revise. So looking into what revision strategies are they using? Are they effective? Are they actually leading to learning? Because quite often, strategies can feel really effective, but they're not leading to any long-term learning. And so, digging a bit deeper.
Yeah. I think sometimes kids can look like they're demotivated when, as you say, actually they just don't really know where to start. They can feel very overwhelmed. So I really like that idea. If you've got a kid who doesn't seem motivated, of just breaking it down, hooking it onto something. And what you're saying is giving a certain amount of time with an immediate kind of, positive consequence for that, and breaking it down, maybe giving them a specific task. I think that can sometimes really help, can't it?
Yeah, especially, it's massively overwhelming. I could bring up, I've got this chart that I did for my eldest son's
Oh,
GCSEs, and
yeah, show us.
it's
Yeah.
basically, I'm gonna have to stand back. So this chart is 9 GCSEs, and each little square represents a double page spread on a textbook.
Oh my goodness. So for those
Okay,
of
so
you who are
this
listening
is
on a podcast, you can go over to YouTube and have a look at this chart. It's wow.
it's massive, right? And like I'm really tall, and it's massive. That was just there, and I just saw it. But it's the thing about that is that he looked at one look at that and was like, it feels so overwhelming. So it's about
Yeah.
kind of picking, like, actually, what's the thing you find? Well, let's just do one thing, and then
Yes.
also really praising the, we talk about growth mindset a lot, and there's lots of controversy about how we use it, but really thinking about what is it that you want for your child. If they've not been doing any revision and then they sit down and do half an hour revision, actually talk about how I'm really proud of you. I'm really pleased that you've
Yes.
done that. That's really impressive. I know you were finding that really hard. So just thinking about the language that you use around that, rather than saying, if you work really hard, because, if your child
Mm.
works really, really hard, doesn't get the grade that they want, and then that was the outcome was, the kind of extrinsic reward was based on that outcome. Actually, I would value him. I certainly try and value in my children the effort that they put in, when they're doing their best. And we have a lot of fizzy pigtails, like the little sweets and stuff, and Percy pigs and spoiled sweets in our house that kind of get everybody through. And every so often I'll just bring out a bowl for each of them to try and reward them.
And I think
So
what
that's
was also buried in what you said there was that sometimes kids can feel like they're trying hard, but actually the strategies they're using are not the
Mhm.
best strategies.
Yeah.
And so, sitting there and rereading something, or if somebody's been in their room and they're kind of half distracted and they're underlining, they could use hours, but actually not learn much. So I think
Yeah.
that's the other thing, breaking it down and maybe helping them to think about what's the best way that I could get this
Yeah.
in my brain.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you mentioned as well the kind of kids that are putting themselves under enormous pressure.
Yes.
Um, and I do remember I had a lovely student once who presented me with her revision timetable, basically 8 till 8. She wasn't going to have a break. I don't know what she was
Wow.
thinking. And I was like, there's only so much that you can do. And I think it's about as a parent, again, being realistic. What are your expectations? Think about the amount of, like, how much reading can you do? I've just come onto this podcast having done 2 hours of reading and putting together some research for work. I'm kind of at my limit of what I could
Yeah.
absorb. So actually, they need to have breaks. Realistically, if they're doing much more than probably 6 hours, they're doing too much. They're not getting anything out of it. So again, just saying, okay. And then the other thing that we're saying as well, in terms of planning, I always say to students, when you plan, the first thing to do is put in the fun stuff. Because if you haven't got the fun
Mm.
stuff, whether that for you, it might be playing on your Xbox, it might be going for a run, it might be dog walking, it might be seeing your best friend, it might be scrolling, I might be scrolling on social media, and that's absolutely fine. But actually plan that relaxation, that
Mm.
downtime in. And again, so thinking about, let's not worry about, if you don't do enough work, you're not going to get, your 3A stars or your 9 9s or whatever it is that you're
Mm.
wanting,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
actually going, realistically, in this day, what
Mm.
can you get done? And that will
Yeah.
depend as well on, emotionally how that child is feeling, physically how they're feeling, whether they're tired, um, whether they've, had a good night's sleep, whether there's other things that are bothering them. And again, as a parent, you can dig into those. You can say, okay, do you know what? Today's just, let's write today off. It's
Mm.
okay. It doesn't matter.
Mm.
It's, we still got plenty of time. Um, and, if they don't revise something, and I always say there's always one question in the, if you're doing, I don't know, 30 exams, which some of these kids are, they're
I
doing masses
know.
and masses of exams. There's going to be questions you can't answer, and that's okay. So, just recognizing that it's not going to be a smooth process. I mean, like one or two students, it might be, obviously, but for most kids, it's going to be a really, really bumpy ride.
Yeah. I
And
love that idea of sitting down and saying, let's make a list of all the things you need in your life. And social connection is the first thing. Sleep is another thing.
mm,
Eating, family time, all those
yeah,
kinds of things. And
yeah,
then you fit work in around that. I think what sometimes is quite alluring for parents is that it can be quite tempting to go along with it because they want their kids to do extremely well. And so
mm,
it can take a lot of self-control, I think, for parents to say, do less.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And my husband and I argue about it a lot because I'm
Right.
like, I don't think they should do more because I've got boys, so none of them want to do any work. But actually, we've also done some learning. So, use this opportunity to like actually realistically, how much can they do? My particularly the son doing A levels has discovered that 6 hours is too much. That sixth
Right.
hour, by the time he gets to 5 hours, he's done his 5 hours. He's been working really, really hard. I've been so proud of how hard he's worked. But he gets to that 6 hour that he was planning the first week, and he was just like, every time it was like, I'm really struggling. I can't do it. He was distracted. But what's the point of doing anything? He's
Yeah.
better to go off, better to go out and do a run, because at that
Yes.
point, that's going to strengthen all the memories. It's been shown that exercise really improves your help consolidate your memory. It's good for your brain. He's better off doing that than trying to cram more stuff in his brain that's not going in.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Amazing. So you're saying the one thing that parents can do is to really be in the moment and really see what their child needs. And it's all about tweaking, isn't it? You have to be
Mm,
so flexible and adaptable
yeah.
as a parent because it depends what child you have in front of you. It depends how that child is on that day. And you're trying to tweak things around that, but really being with where they are. Is that
Yeah, yeah,
right?
absolutely. I think you've hit the nail on the head. Beautiful summary.
Yeah. Oh, Lucinda, thank you so much for coming on today. Please do check out Lucinda's podcast for more really brilliant ideas. There are so many parents and kids who are in this tunnel of exams right now, and it's a really tough time. So
Yeah,
thanks so much for spending the time with me today.
that's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.